We're good? Okay, good afternoon. Happy September 19th. First day of fall is 2 days away. Thank you all for making it. You could be anywhere in the world right now, and you chose to be here with us. Marty drove literally from White Bear Lake, Matamidi to be here, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're here to bring a ton of value to you over the next hour. My goal is you guys walk away with at least one thing you can implement by the end of the week. I'm going to take a ton of notes because this guy is one of my favorite KW agents that I've met, and you've been with us how long?
I think it's about 15 years now at KW, and then 15 years before that with other firms.
Yeah, so that would have been what, 08?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, so we've known each other almost the whole time that you joined us. So just to give you guys perspective as we start here, and again, you guys online ask a bunch of questions. So Marty, your team currently is ranked 29th in the region year to date through August, 769,000 in gross commissions, 27.4 million in sales volume. If you happen to be in our office, which obviously you're in that office, you would easily be the number one team in our office, and you are crushing it. You're easily the number one agent in your market center based on your stats.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that is fun. So we'll talk about profit share in a little bit as well. I'll share those numbers with you, but share with us just how you got started in real estate. Again, so you've been in it, you said 15 prior, 30 years. You must have got in when you were like 16 then.
Yeah, right. No, so I was I graduated with an econ degree from St. Olaf College in 1989 and had no idea what I was going to do, except that at that time, everybody who wanted to do sales all wanted to work for 3M because it was this big company over on my side of town. And we all wanted 30K in a car. That was kind of the big joke back then. If I can get 30K in a car, I'm done. And of course, I didn't get 30K or a car because all the other smarter people at St. Olaf got hired ahead of me. So I had to leave there and get into start looking for other sales options. And then I went to meet with a gentleman who was a regional vice president at that time of a company called Burnett Realty. And he interviewed me and said, well, why don't you get into a job where you can determine what you want to make? And I said, well, how does that work? He said, well, you can actually just like make some goals, set some goals, and go make what you want to make. The long and short of that is I ended up doing that, and we sat down and did some goal planning. And within about 24 months, I was very young, so I kind of screwed around when I was 22 that first year. But by the time I was 23, we were on our way and kind of figuring out how to sell. And I think I bought my first house at 24. So that was super exciting. And then I was with that firm for a while, and then I eventually made my way over to KW through some really fun recruiting from a team leader that has been very important in my life.
So you got licensed at 21 then?
Yeah, 22. I think 22. Yeah.
Holy moly. I wish I would have got licensed.
Oh, and then further to that, my mother was in real estate at that time, so I didn't work with her, but she was in the business, so I was familiar with the industry enough to know at that time that I thought I didn't want to get into it because she was working weekends and nights. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be tough. But then when the guy convinced me that you could choose your income, I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And he said, you can work when you want. And all of those things led me to believe that that would be a really fun path to take. So that's how I got there.
So how, being that young, how did you do those first few years? And I'm going to ask you, how you ended up at KW in that process. But, again, being 22, how did it go?
So it was challenging because I looked like I was 14 when I was 22.
You still look like you're about 20, 32 maybe.
So anyway, it was hard, but I think what I did, probably that was the most important for my business, was I figured out who my, top 30, 40 friends were from St. Olaf, and I put them on a list and I started nagging them. They all had real jobs, unlike my job, which I didn't think was real at the time. And so I would sit and hit on them with, phone calls. Basically back then we only used the phone and we didn't have texting. So I would actually call them every couple months and just remind them what I'm doing. And I would say 60% of my sales in those first 2 years were direct results of first-time home buyers from people I graduated. And then also I went to a private high school in St. Paul and I had that list. And so I worked those guys hard. So I had 2 different lists that I was working from. And that was where I got most of my business. The rest of my business back then, open houses were super easy to make sales from. We not only could pick up clients pretty quickly, but we could flip them into, take a prospect at an open house and flip them to a client. Back then, we didn't have client contracts, so it was a little different, or buyer contracts, excuse me. But it was really interesting to pick those people up and spin them into houses. So those were probably the couple ways that I got my business when I was young.
Wow. And so tell me your name. Brooke. And what's your name again, sir? Luigi, that's right. So you guys are brand new, right? Yeah. Okay. So what's the lessons there that he just shared?
Make all my college friends.
Yes. Well, and you were connected, again, I don't know how long you've been in the Twin Cities, but anybody you've been connected with, that's, you guys have it different today because you can use your Instagram or your Facebook or whatever, and you can just hit those people because you know all those people. Now yours sounds like your friends aren't all in the Twin Cities, so you're going to have a little different exercise to do. But if I were your age and new to the Twin Cities, I would either get in a BNI or create your own networking group with 4 or 5 friends and try to help each other, other people that might be in sales or mortgages or something else, and try to create your own way of making business. I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah. So people do business with people they know, like, and trust, and you can't be a secret agent right out of the gate. And it doesn't matter your age or your experience or whatnot, you just got to reach out.
Yep.
Awesome. So, so we spent 15 years, roughly at that company, great company.
We have to know how many houses you sold in those first couple of years.
Okay. So funny. My first year, I think I made $12,000. I was broke. I was struggling, and with a little bit, I had to meet with my manager. Back then they were called managers. I had to meet with my manager several times to talk about my lack of discipline and what I was doing wrong and why things weren't happening for me, and to talk about confidence, because I didn't have confidence at that age that people were going to trust me with their biggest investment. So there were things I had to overcome personally. We had that meeting, and I think the second year I made $55,000, which is actually, if you go back to 1990, that's probably like 150 today. I mean, that was a lot. I mean, back then that was a point of income. So that was really exciting to basically do at least a triple in my second year. And then it just slowly kept getting better because it gets easier as you have past clients, because then they refer you people if you're doing the right things.
But like, did you sell 10 houses?
Oh yeah, units. I mean, so our average sale price back then, I'm going to kind of take a stab at this, was probably $72,000. So it was much harder to make money.
Yeah.
And I would say I might have done 6 or 8 in my first year, and I might have done maybe 14 in my. I mean, it wasn't a lot.
And like, what was the percentage of your college, high school friends?
Oh, it was well over 50%. I mean,
Okay.
it was probably 60-70%. I mean, I really did focus on
Yeah,
that.
that's great.
I just didn't know where I was going to get the business, because I was a little bit paralyzed by my youth, and I think it's way different today. Lucky for you two. I think today, I don't know what it is, but I think people that are older really kind of like working with younger people, and they think they're more assertive and more creative. You guys have more ways to get information. I mean, there's just so many different things that I think you're way better at a young age than I was. And so I think it's easier, and I might be just saying that, but I think it's easier to succeed as a younger person in this business today than it was 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So, 06, 07, 08, roughly, Connie Bossert starts calling. Is that right?
Correct.
And so Connie, longtime team leader in our region, her and I are probably the longest standing team leaders in the North Central region. So I think she beat me a little bit, but maybe she got out of it before me. But one of the most respected people in our region, and still around today, obviously. Yeah. So she started calling you, say, hey, come learn about this Keller Williams deal. How did all that go, and how'd you end up making the move?
So I had pretty strong family ties to a larger firm in town, and so it was hard to move, but they had gotten bought out by a big, massive company called Realogy, and nothing quite felt right with the purchase of that firm. And so I started looking around, and at that time, I had already made a change to another gentleman who had left that company asked me to come join his group. I did that for a couple years, and that was a colossal failure because it just was not managed properly. Anyways, long and short of that was, I started looking around. I met with a red team. I met with a blue, red, and white team, and then I met with a red and white team, and the red and white KW team. Connie was the only one who really asked me like deep questions about like what's important to me and how are we going to get to these goals and what do I want to achieve. And we talked a lot about. She did an exercise too called the book or something, or the script or something, where she asked a litany of questions. We had to go through that and talk about what's really important. And when I figured out what those things were, she felt like we could put the pieces in place to have a more streamlined team. At that point, I was a single agent. So we were going to put a team together and try to move in that direction. All I had was an assistant and myself. And so that was the reason I ended up coming to KW. She was a really good, she cared about me. I guess that's the bottom line. She cared about what we were doing.
Yeah, and I know, Matt, you were on at that time. Just so you guys know, when Marty made that move, Todd Bootser at the time was our regional director. This was a really, really, really big deal. This was like the equivalent of if the Timberwolves traded for, Steph Curry, literally. I mean, the whole entire real estate metro was in awe of this guy Marty joining Keller Williams. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. And the other thing, there were several. Our office location is technically Vadnais Heights. I live in White Bear Lake, but it's in Vadnais Heights. And there were 4 agents at that office that were from my old blue and white company. And those agents are all people that I really liked. I mean, they're really solid, good people. And so that's why I ended up going to that office. I thought it was important to surround myself with like-minded people that understand what's important, and they're all still there. And Larry Everhart, Scott Smith, Pat Kinney, I can go on and on. There's a bunch of them, but they're all there, and it's been a really good office to be in.
Yeah. We interviewed Scott a while back. Great
Super
people
sharp and willing to share everything, especially the Smith team. They share it.
Yeah, good people. So, so you join us. It's just you and an admin. What'd you do? How did you grow? Walk us through the path of growth and what you learned, and kind of bring that up to today.
Yeah, I probably was a late starter on the team as far as KW goes. They had pushed that kind of into our brains pretty early, and I wasn't really ready to do that. So back to mindset, I always thought that if I wasn't there and if I wasn't the guy, that the deal wasn't going to get done. And I learned over time that you actually can have people on your team that can do things just as well or better than you. And people will entrust, if they trust the brand, they trust all of you. And so it was important to put the right pieces in place. And so Connie helped me kind of set that up. And we talked about, okay, you should probably get a buyer's agent. I was doing just enough business where I felt like I was hitting my head a little bit, and I felt tired, and I didn't want to do all the open houses and all that. So I got a buyer's agent, and she started picking up those items that I didn't want to do. And then she had some success. A few years later, we went on to hire 2 more buyer's agents. And now my buyer's agents, once they do a certain level of business, also get to list properties. So that's part of the deal as well now for 2 or 3 of them. So that's great. And that's kind of how it evolved. And then I also went through a series of admin people, going from having, everything from an unlicensed admin to a licensed admin to a killer admin. And now I've got this person in place, and she's been with me 7 years, and she's all my PAs, does everything. I mean, she is in charge of the entire program, does all of the social media, team meetings. I mean, she runs the whole thing. It's once you have a killer person in charge, it absolutely blows your mind and changes your business.
Wow. And so current structure is what? So how many folks on the team? We'll talk about Luke in a second too.
4 agents total, and then 1 admin. So 5 of us in total, and with 4 agents selling.
Nice. So if you guys recall, in our recent team meeting, our team leader, John Ledebor, is not here. He's down in Austin at DL Skills Camp or something. So he was good friends with Luke, I think. I personally, when I got back into selling, I was going to do a deal with Luke. It didn't come together, but I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is awesome. And he was at some tiny little brokerage of his own, I think, if I recall. And sure enough, I was like, oh man, we should try to get this guy to KW. And I was talking to John about him, I think, and or Matt, I don't recall, but all of a sudden a couple months later he joins you. And I was like, holy smokes, how does this guy who has his own brokerage, I think, right? How did that all come together? It blew my mind from a standpoint of clearly I'm not thinking big enough as it pertains to growth. So walk us through that if you would.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I guess, a little blessing from high above, but Luke and I ironically ended up being members at a golf club. And we had a couple interactions on the driving range. let's call it. And long and short of that is, one day he called me and said, let's have lunch. And once we met for lunch, I mean, I always knew he was a really sharp, nice guy, but I didn't know like how important that relationship was going to be. And so about 6 months later, we kept having these lunches, and we figured out a way to make this happen. And he wanted to divest politely of the other agents. And they're all from this side of town, so I think many of them are probably here working in this office. And then he came over and worked with me because he lives over in the Matamidi area, which is over near where I am. So our children were in the same schools and all of that. And we quickly became fast friends and decided we wanted to work together. And I told him that I was hoping he could kind of just take my business over too as well. Remember that.
So retire at like 55 then.
Right. I wish. Yeah, we'll go with that.
So, and you guys ask questions. You guys know how this works. We're very informal. If you guys online have questions, ask away. So you mentioned business comes from repeat and referral over the years, but just walk us through, what are your lead gen systems? What do you guys do? Why do people choose you? Where's business coming from?
Well, okay. So one of my, I guess, biggest challenges is obviously COVID has changed the way everybody does business. And I think it's happened in this industry as well. When I started, my original manager said, you need to come in every day and treat this thing up. And I said, what do I do with it? Now, I know you guys have heard that, like, oh, you got to lead prospect, you got to lead generate, all that. But like the reality is, if you don't come in and do something, you will have no business. I know now you don't have to come in, you can do it from your house. But if your house is not a place where you're getting stuff done, then you need to come into the office. You need to make dials. And that's what I did. And so you do that enough. And I'm not the guy that does 100 calls a day. That's not me. And I'm not even the guy that hits my 20 every day. But if I make 5 to 10 calls every day to somebody in my phone, I've got 4,600 people, I think, in my phone. If I call somebody, I'm going to have some business someday from that conversation. You just need to get in, and I'm sure you all can look on your phone. I bet you all have at least 1,000 contacts in your phone. Start calling those people. And I love that. I'm going to screw up the name of that class, but the class that two people, the prospecting class from A to Z, go from A to Z.
Do the database too.
Yeah.
DTD.
And I've done it twice, and I still, a little complex for me because I'd rather just like look at my phone for people I want to call and call them. But the reality is, if you just put a little bit of that together, and the exercise you do at Bold, where you start at A and you do accounting, and you find a couple of accountants, put them in your phone. You go to B, find a barber.
I just heard you talking about that.
I mean, it's silly stuff, but it's really easy, and that's a great way to get your business rolling. And so, and now it's really mostly referral business, but I get at least 50% of my business through places where I'm frequenting, which would be Lifetime Fitness and a golf club, a private golf club that I play golf at. That is my focus. I am there to get business, and yes, I'm golfing, but I am not thinking about golf. I'm there to get business, and that's at least 50% of my business.
So you're 30 years in? How many years in?
30 years real estate. Yep.
30 years in, you're still making 5 to 10 calls per day?
Yep.
Okay. And again, I realize not every day, but for the most part. So some of you in the room are saying, okay, Marty, I can do that. What do I say? Are you asking for business, or are you just checking in? Like, what is that call? Walk us through the call.
Well, I think the easiest call to make once you've been in the business a while, so I think it's a little weird. I think it's a little weird calling clients like in that first, the first like 90 days, it's okay. You can call with a 30, 60, 90-day check-in. But then when it gets past that, it starts to get a little wonky when you're making that call. So what I'll usually do is I like to call people that are a little farther back in my database, meaning I sold them houses more than 2 or 3 years ago. And if you drive down the street or you happen to drive by or something makes you think of them, you just say, hey, I just drove by your house, was thinking about you, just checking in to see how it's going. All you're trying to do is say hi. And I never make it a business call. I mean, I can tell you that the trainers are going to tell you always got to ask for business. That's fine. That's not how I work. I try to do it on love and friendship, and hopefully they're going to call me because they like it. And so that's what I do is I just make a call like that, and they're going to open up if there's something going on and tell you. And it's easy because you've already done a deal with them. And they ask you. Right. And they do. And it's tricky at this time of year because you have to be careful what you say. I mean, I've probably had a few. So one of my focuses is Lakeshore. I live on a big lake called White Bear Lake. And I probably do, 50, 60% of all of the MLS business on that lake. intentionally. I mean, I've been doing that for 15 years because that's my main focus. And I know I'm sometimes too candid with sellers. I think right now the lake is having some problems with lake levels. So I'm talking a little bit about that. I'm talking a little bit about interest rates. And if you talk to me enough, you might not be selling. You might be like, well, I think I'm going to wait for the water to come back, or I'm going to wait for interest rates to drop, because our market, last year we had 18 sales on the lake. This year we're at 2 MLS, total MLS sales, 18 to 2. And so I don't know how I can hide that from them. They're going to say, well, what's the lake market doing? So I want to be honest with them, and I am. And then sometimes that causes them to back off and put an elevator in and live a few more years instead of going to assisted living, which is where they should be going.
So setting that aside, because that's specific, but say it's, someone wherever who lives in Woodbury, for example, and you drive by and you're like, hey, Sally, just drove by thinking about you. And she says, hey, how's the market? What are you saying to them now?
I'm telling them it's a tricky market, because I think it is tricky. And I'm just saying, obviously, that interest rates have done a double in the last 12 months. And so people have had to wrap their hands around a new normal. And I explained to, if they're getting in a position where they might be, feel like they might be moving in this conversation, of course, I tell them that this interest rate level is still, you guys have been around long enough to know that 7% is a fabulous interest rate. Everybody else who's been in the market less than 6 years, they think it's a really high interest rate. It's just not, but nobody knows that because they don't know the historical story of interest rates. So I just try to enlighten them and say it's still a great rate. It's just, and especially with our younger buyers, people in their 30s, they've only seen 3 and 4% interest rates. So they have no idea what we're in right now. And they just think it's a colossal, they think the world's coming to an end and they just need to get over it and move on. And I always, you guys always hear the thing, right? Marry the date the rate or whatever, that you can use that kind of language, but like the reality is in the next 5 years, I'm sure rates will adjust again in our direction, in our favor. And you refinance. It's not that big of a deal. So you have to explain that to them. And hopefully they're still willing to make a move. But it is challenging, as you guys know, to get people to move when they're in a 3.5% rate and you're trying to get them to move to a bigger house and absorb a higher interest rate. So that takes a little bit of patience and coaching.
So with that challenge that we're all dealing with right now, what are you guys doing to find business, or where are you seeing opportunity?
Great question. I think I'm trying to think about some of my buyers agents because they're busy. They're actually, cranking out some sales. I'm working a lot of listings, and so that's not as busy right now. And as you know, this time of year gets a little tricky as well. So I think the opportunity is really just in people that are having, at least for my buyers agents, people that are going from married to 1 to 2 to 3 kids. I have a nephew that's also in the industry, and he's been selling. Lots of people bought their first house 5 years ago, and they're already into their second house because they're on their second baby. So I think you need to kind of watch those trends and see who's in your database that's expanding their family, or divorcing for that matter, or something that causes a life change. Yeah, I'm sorry, you had a question back there.
So going back to your staff, sounds like your admin is busy. For 70 days.
Yeah, that's a good. Well, she's the first admin I've had that I think truly has bought into what we're doing. And I also, more than you need to know, but I also compensate based on team success. And so team success, meaning everybody's fees can be like put into her compensation, because she isn't just doing deals for me. She's doing deals for everybody on the team. I mean, she's really busy and she's responsive. I don't want to say she has 3 kids and they do play hockey. So she's a busy mother, but she is just so super responsive that all of us feel like she's literally working 24/7. And so if she says, I got to take the kids to the dentist, you say, yeah, go for it. I mean, like, you can't get hung up on these things. They need to live their life. But I also know that she's going to take the calls and she's going to get the contract done when I need it done and do the counter offer at 10 o'clock at night when I need it done. And she does it.
It's just not a straight salary. It's incentive based.
Correct.
But it's good reason.
And kind of a heavy incentive. I mean, she wants these deals. Sometimes she's like, could you just pitch in? Like when we're trying to get a deal together, I'm like, she knows if we get another sale, she makes more money. I'm like, well, do you want to pitch in? So anyway, so it gets a little tricky sometimes, but I think having them have the buy-in financially really helps.
I was going to ask, since she's so busy doing all your things and you're making phone calls, what else are you doing?
Golfing, no.
Well, yes, yeah,
Right.
I get that.
No, I mean, I'm really
Are you
trying.
meeting with people still? Are you?
Yeah, so we have, I'll probably get 2 or 3 calls a week where people want me to come out and do something. We had a weird call last week. Some people in their 70s called and asked me to come out because they're putting a book together for their children of who to call when, in case they both meet their maker on the same day, which I thought was weird. But I went out to their house and they got a fancy lakeshore house and we had a great meeting and I gave them the analysis and I said, we want to be, and they said, well, the reason we called you is because we saw your picture in the newspaper and it looks like there are 5 of you and we want to make sure we're covered even if you retire. And I had never, like, these are all things I've not heard in a meeting before. And I was like, because sometimes people look at a team and they go, well, I want you, I don't want them. Well, this was the exact opposite experience. I thought, wow, this team thing is actually catching on. And I think the consumer realizes the benefits now of having a team. And that's taken a long time to convince consumers of, I think.
So to Julie's point,
Yeah.
let's say we went to high school together, whatever. How often am I hearing from you besides the, random phone calls per year? Are you guys doing events? Are you doing postcards? Are you doing, like, what does the lead gen levers look like?
Yeah. So again, Angela runs everything out of command. And so there is a touch program going on that I don't pay attention to. Shame on me, but honesty's key.
Okay.
Honesty's key here. So I don't pay attention to it, but I do know last year we had a Hockey Day Minnesota party. It was a $5,000 event and it was hugely successful. We invited all of our past clients and we had it at a private country club and we paid for the place and we had free booze and food all day long. It was fabulously successful.
What did you do? Play hockey?
No. Minnesota Hockey Day is Hockey Day Minnesota. There's a bunch of games on TV.
Yeah.
And so we had all these TVs set up so everybody could watch. And White Bear Lake, by the way, was in Hockey Day Minnesota, and they're in it. And Matamidi, which is the school my kids go to, was in it as well. So we had this big party because most of our clients are from that area.
So they're watching these.
And so they were all watching the games rather than freezing outside at the real event. They got to watch them and drink beer with us and wine. And we paid for it. And it was great. And I think we probably ended up with 6 or 7 quality leads from that. I mean, where they're going to maybe transact this year. And so it was certainly worth the cost of doing it. And then we do, like Smith, we got this idea from the Smith team in Venice Heights. We do pies every year. So we do, at Thanksgiving, we go out and we do that a little different. We just do it to the past clients of that year. I think they might go to everybody every year. Like we do, 50 to 70 pies. We don't do 800 pies if we've done 800 sales. We probably should do it to everybody, but that is a little more labor intensive than I want to do. So we literally put them together and everybody puts them in their car. Each agent has, 10 or 12 pies and we go out for a day and we deliver pies and say hi to everybody. Kind of fun. I love it. But I mean, most of it's command and she's got everything set up through command. We just listed a property on another lake, Pine Tree Lake, and she's going to take now a video that we have from that listing and she calls it just pushing it out to our database. So there might be 25 or 3,500 people in that database that'll get some sort of a hit with a video on a new listing.
Is your day structured though, every day kind of the same, or is every day different?
Yeah, I basically have from 8 to 12 is when I'm going to be in the office every day. I try to work out every morning and then I try to be in the office from 8 to 12 doing something. And that can look like a bunch of different, I'm either doing market analysis or I'm making phone calls. If I don't have a CMA to do, then I'm talking on the phone. I very rarely am showing houses. I usually push that to the buyer's agents and let them run with the buyers now. Unless it's somebody that's really a close friend of mine.
So then afternoons, are you signing contracts? Are you?
Great. I mean, this afternoon I'm going to go golfing, but
Afternoon.
yeah, right. But no, I mean, if I have a contract to sign for sure. So like this morning on the way here, I got a call from one of our sellers and we're about 100,000 apart on a big sale. So he and I talked through about 3 different scenarios. And then I called my assistant, Angela, told her what we talked about and she's running with it from there. So she's putting the counter offer proposals and the net sheets and all that back to the seller. And then we're going to get that signed and pass it on to the buyer. And if that goes together, it'll be a, $2.5 million sale. So it'll be really cool, but it's taken 3 weeks of negotiating. So it takes a long time on the bigger sales. It takes a long time to get through the process.
Great questions. What else? We're at the midway point here. What let's just, because I know I always get crazy fun stuff out of this stuff. So let's talk just for a minute about the personal side. Obviously, married, kids, all that fun stuff.
Correct.
How many kids?
2 boys, senior in high school and a senior in college.
Nice. How are you, as a busy realtor, doing a ton of business? Talk about work-life balance. What are you doing purposefully with them and or your spouse? Anything you want to share as far as advice you'd give us to maintain sanity in this busy real estate industry?
Yeah. For me, that's been pretty easy. I just have always placed a high level of interest in, doing whatever my kids are doing and being with them. So my oldest son was a hockey player, so we spent a lot of time at his hockey games, and now he's in college playing club hockey. He's in Michigan, Ann Arbor, and loves it, and that's great. And then my senior in high school is a competitive tennis player, so we go to virtually every tennis. I don't know if I've missed a tennis match in 8 years. He's been playing for about 8 or 9 years. And then we are off to, actually tomorrow, we're going to Vermont to look at a college. And so and I'm going alone with them because I like to do as much as I like to go with my wife, she's going to stay here and I'm going to take him and do some father-son time, which will be fun. So those are the kinds of things I'm doing with the kids. I make sure I make time. And then obviously with my college kid, it's become a little different because now we have to go visit Michigan football games in order to see them, and that's fun too.
Yeah.
So
nice.
I don't like the Gophers anymore. I like the Wolverines.
Yeah, but that's cool. Other questions? Again, you guys have questions? I mean, I got a whole list of them here, but I want to make sure you guys can ask your questions.
Okay, so events, you do pies, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to work a deal here too, but what else do you do for events?
Okay, so last year we had 3 events. We had an so there's a big apple orchard, pine tree apple orchards out near our house. So we had a big photo, we called it, I don't know, like a fall visit the apple orchard. I don't remember what we titled it, but they came out to the apple orchard and we had a professional photographer there taking pictures of anybody who wanted to do family photos with the pumpkin patch and the apple orchard's got a bunch of cool fall things where you can take photos. So that was basically a photo shoot type event, which I thought was really successful. That was cool. And then we did a party at our office because we moved. So one thing I did do, and I have to be careful, I'm not sure how that whole offsite thing works, but I do have an office downtown White Bear Lake. And so we had a grand opening. And we had everybody in for a little wine event at my office, which was really cool. And then we did the Hockey Day Minnesota event, which was a tremendous success. And those were the 3. I think I just did 3 last year. And then the pies, that's 4. So yeah, I think if you do it quarterly, that's more than enough. And I think you can also pick your budget. There's like Luke, who's on my team, who's much smarter than me. He will do, he's got season tickets, I think, for Twins. I don't know about Vikings, Twins and Wild for sure. And he is always doing raffles, things where he touches his clients and gives out tickets. And he's giving away tickets all the time to these events. I don't know exactly how that works financially and for deductions and all that stuff, but it's a really cool thing. And his database loves it because they get really good seats for the Twins game, which is rare because they're having a good year. So everybody actually wants those seats this year. So that's been kind of fun. So those are just, I guess, some ideas for you.
Do you get about 20% of the people show up?
Yeah, at the most. I mean, it's really about the touch before the event and that people, and then, obviously now I don't understand the social media thing like some of you. But we have people there filming, doing photos, whatever, and then sending that out to our database to make it look like we're having a great big event, and that's kind of what it's all about, is to just touch people.
Yeah, you have vendor partners helping you share the cost.
So I will tell you that's probably, I guess I know he's got a question on here, like if you could do it over, what would you do over? That would be one of the things. I don't do that for 2 reasons. Number one, I don't know. I don't do a lot of buy side work, which means I don't have a ton of lenders that I'm tight with, but I work with about 4 different lenders and it's sort of hard to pin down one of them to be, I mean, I don't want to try to force my clients to go work with that lender. So that hasn't worked for me. We do specifically work with one title company and they will help us a little bit, but I haven't really focused on, I think I could squeeze them for more, but I don't. That's just my choice.
Yeah. And I would say you asked about 20% as far as attendance. Events are kind of like open houses where it's not about the actual event. It's about the communication before and after. That's the key. Would you agree?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was referring to, I was thinking budget wise, so.
Yeah. Like I do 2 events a year and my attendance was down last year and I was like, holy smokes, it cost me half as much as the previous year. And I was like, cool, because I still got to do all the photos and reach outs and all of that. So yeah, that's cool. So I want to talk about profit share at some point, but before we go there, any big mistakes you've made that you don't want us to repeat? Any big failures, any mistakes, anything you're like, holy smokes, here's a good one that you shouldn't do. Anything there?
I think for 14 years, I paid for top producer and I didn't use it effectively and didn't understand the power of a database. And so, and I, at that time, maybe didn't have the type of assistant in place that could really help me kind of harness that process and how you force yourself to make calls and have calls pop up. So Command does all that. And now I'm doing it. And now when I do log in to make a few calls, I am doing that out of Command because I actually know how to use Command, which it took me a while because it's not super easy to learn. So I kind of started to get into that and that has been helped me. But I would say my number one mistake is that I did not keep in close enough contact with clients from way back. In other words, when you've been doing it 30 years, I should have kept. So 2 pieces to that. Number one, I didn't keep close enough contact to the people I sold houses to in the 90s and the early 2000s. And then second to that is I've never thought about their children. In other words, I haven't, and now their kids are all out of college. I'm getting a few of them, but I never focused on, oh my God, they have kids graduating. I should celebrate that and find out how to get in front of their kids. So I'm losing all those sales to these people because they're young. And so they're picking them up off, I don't know, Instagram or something, and they're getting sales and I'm not getting those sales. So those would be probably 2 of my biggest faults with that.
That's good. Yeah. Questions?
Have you worked with investors?
I have. So Luke on my team is a big time investor. So all of my investors, I refer to him and we only do residential investment. We don't do commercial stuff, but yes, we do definitely work with investors and he's got a really neat process that he goes through with them, but I refer all of them to him because that's his specialty. The other thing that I'll share with you guys, and I know it's changed a lot, but at least, I mean, and Perry can attest to this with his neighborhood that he lives in. I still think the best thing to do when you're a new agent is figure out an area where you want to work. I think that's never going to go away. And agents, I think, are much more broad in where they're working now, which is fine. But I do think you have to have a niche where you work and own. And so for me, that's been my focus is I literally don't go more than about 15 miles from my house to show houses.
Okay.
That's just,
This is the other side of the world for you. I mean,
this was a big haul to get over to Edina. But the point to that is just that I think if you have an area that you focus on, you guys can pick a neighborhood and I can tell you who the top agents are. And it's just that simple. I know who wins in Country Club. I know who wins in Bear Path. And I know who, all these different neighborhoods. I can tell you who all the top agents are because they've been dominating for years and their main focus is in those neighborhoods.
Yeah. So a follow-up question to that is how do you approach the combo when building a relationship with investors?
Well, I don't have a lot with them because I turn them right over to Luke, but I think the younger people, so that would be, I guess, another thing that I didn't do is I didn't buy investment property in my first 20 years in the real estate business. What I did when I got to about year 21 is I started buying into partnerships. So now I have some apartment partnerships that I'm in that are helping me with some, I guess you guys call it mailbox money, which is kind of nice, but I don't have I have 1 investment property and a lot of agents who've been in as long as me have 15 or 20 and that pays for a lot of things in life. So I'm probably not, I'm hoping you're going to have another guest here that can answer that question better than me, or maybe you can.
We've had a few over the years. Yeah. I mean, let's table that for another time. You could go back and, Donovan DeMarais was a great interview. We talked about investors a little bit, but we've got several. And all of these, I think, are on YouTube or right. Yeah. So we could go back into the archive. So, so we got 20 minutes. So I want to share a fun profit share. Let's have that profit share conversation. So Marty is currently on average, I looked up your stats. So you're averaging about $1,400, just under $1,500 a month in profit share year to date, which I think is down a little bit from years past. Let's talk about your fun profit share story. This is the truest of mailbox money, but let's talk about you in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, so I believe in coaching. First of all, we never talked about coaching, but I coached with MAPS for maybe 12 years, 10 years. And that was a great experience and really helped my business as well as my team leader. So that was really cool. But right before that, I was in a program called the Strategic Coach, which is another program in Chicago. And there was one other realtor that was in, it was basically a financial, there were a lot of people in the financial industry that were in this thing. And we'd met once a quarter in Chicago. And the long and short of the Strategic Coach was you'd go and they'd teach you how to figure out who you are, how you do business, and do it better and streamline and create systems and processes and things. And it was a little different for realtors than financial planners, but I met this guy from Sioux Falls named Tony Ratchford, fabulous guy. And he and I just continued to be friends. And one day he called me up. He was having a hard time with his broker. And he called me up and he said, "What do you think of KW?" I said, "God, I love KW." And he goes, "Well, what do you love about it?" And I said, "Well," and I gave him all of the things we've talked about. I got this team leader. She does this for me. She does this for me. The company believes in this. They let you market yourself. I went through all the, God, whatever, God, family, whatever. I went through all those different talking points because they were all fresh in my head. And he said, "Well, maybe we should go meet Gary Keller." And I knew he was a big agent in Sioux Falls. And I'm like, "We should go do that tomorrow." I'm like, "That's a really good idea." So we ended up going to Austin, Texas, and we met with the powers that be at Keller Williams. And about 3-4 months later, he opened his own Keller Williams franchise in Sioux Falls. And I believe, I might kind of screw up the numbers here, I believe they have over 300 agents in that office. And I believe it's the biggest broker in Sioux Falls, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so you're currently, they have 301 agents. Their total profit year to date, $548,000, so $550,000, which means they've profit shared year to date about $225,000.
Right. And so and by the way, to be completely, and he'll be embarrassed that I don't know this, I don't really know how all the money trickles down. But what I do know is that there's 300 agents in there selling houses. And there's some of that money that comes back to me and my wife, which was pretty cool. And so but after that happened, we've always gone down there to network with them because they've got an amazing team. The Ratchford Group's an amazing team. So they were teaching us new systems and things, whatever. And then this profit sharing thing started happening, which was cool. And then he said, "This isn't like money for retirement." He said, "I'm only doing this because I want you guys to have fun with this money." And that is totally not how I'm wired. So I'm like, "Well, no, I mean, we're going to put this money away so I can retire someday." Anyway, long and short of it is all of this money goes into an actual account I have called Marty and Joe. My wife's name is Joe. Marty and Joe's fun account. And I told Perry this year, we wanted to I'm getting old, I'm getting sore, need a hot tub. So I bought a hot tub with the fun account. So there's just a pile of money sitting in this account, and I get to write checks for stuff if we need a car or we need a toy or a four-wheeler or a
Did you get a boat one time?
I got a boat. I got a really cool wakeboard boat. So all of those things have been paid for right out of this account, and it's been extremely gratifying. And so I'm maybe not the guy that's always telling people to join Keller Williams every time I see him. But if somebody asks me, I definitely go deep in that conversation because I know how lucrative it can be. As a byproduct of having somebody join a great company, you get a lot of profit share. It's pretty cool.
So how much went into the fund account this year?
I would say on average, there's between 30 and 50, because my wife is, I don't know how to explain that.
Oh yeah, just your amount year to date was 11,800. I looked it up prior to this.
So there's another
but-
family.
But
it's
Joe
not
gets
just
two.
from-
She's under me. Yeah.
It's
Oh.
not just from that gentleman, is it? Or
It's just from that office. So that office, I mean, I have others. There's a few other, there's 6 or 7 other people that are in my tree line, whatever that's called.
Yeah.
And there's most of them actually are in Woodbury. And, but that's where most of it comes from. Yeah. But it can range from 20 to 45, 50,000 a year.
Yeah. The best part is the promise of that this is just fun money. I love that.
So the 21st of every month, you get a little statement and you're like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And it's fun.
That is fun.
Used to cover taxes. Now it just covers fun stuff.
Right. Other questions you guys have? Again, I have a whole list here. Too quiet. I mean, I guess selfishly, let me ask a couple things. How did you find this amazing talent, Angie?
Great question. So we did And I'm sure you're familiar with the KPAs and all those different
Provisioning
assessments.
process, yeah.
The assessments that Keller Williams, Connie kind of helped work me through the process. We interviewed, I think, about 8 people for this position. And she was already running an operation in I think it was in the beauty industry or something, but she had a pretty sizable group underneath her. And this opportunity was closer to home for her, allowed her to travel less and fit. She had 3 boys under the age at this point, under the age of like 6. And now they're in like middle school or whatever. But anyways, so it was a good fit, and that's how we did it. We went through the KPA, and then we did some other testing that I don't recall, but Connie did it all. I didn't do anything. I mean, it's cool if you get a team leader that'll help you with stuff like this that you don't understand how to do it. It's like worth its weight in gold. So she helped me get through that process, and she's been amazing for 6 or 7 years. It's fun to finally have somebody that literally you can, I talked to her twice on the way down here, and I'm like, I'm pretty much out for the day because I got to go do something. And she's like, we got it covered. And she's putting deals together while we're doing other things. Neat. But that's kind of how we got her.
Love it. I know many of us in the room are sitting here saying, we got to find that person. Yeah. So was it scary in the beginning? You're like, holy smokes, like I'm investing in this person and I'm paying them X amount per month. Like, was there any fear to that in, how long before you're like, holy smokes, this was really a great fit?
Yeah. Big time fear. So when you get somebody that's really good that you're getting from another industry, the number's higher. And so like I had to wrap my hands around, okay, now instead of X, X plus another 15 or 20,000 more than I thought I would be spending on that position. And you just have to like commit to that being the right person. If you get that feeling in your gut, you're like, I think we can make this work. And then you figure out a way to cut other things out of your budget so you can pay for that person. If that person's as good as you think, they're going to pay for themselves 100 times over. I mean, it's amazing how freeing it is to have somebody really good, because I had assistants. She's probably my 9th assistant in 30 years.
And she's been with you so long, I'm guessing at this point, there's not a lot of accountability that you're holding her to. It's probably the other way around at this point.
Yeah, I think, she did say the other day that I need to get busy. Not sure what that meant, but apparently I have to work a little harder this year. So, one of the things I just kind of Perry, one of the things he had mentioned to me on the phone was, and this is super dumb, but sometimes people say, well, how do you get motivated? And this is going to be really safe. I don't compare myself like with Keller Williams agents around the country or agents in the Twin Cities or whatever. But one thing I do, and this comes out like every quarter in our office, we have this thing called the top-down report where they can show you kind of where you stand. And so as a team, I mean, we glance at this when it comes, and if we're not in the top position, we got work to do because we just think we should be in the top.
Ours is by the copier every month. It's posted.
And it's really, for me, that's just motivating. Like if we're not in the top 1 or 2 spots, and then if we slip to 3rd or 4th, then I get in that calling room and start, because that just frustrates me. Because we like to win.
There were 18 homes sold on the lake last year and only 2 this year. How are you making your money?
Yeah, great question. So I've had to sell other properties and had to list other properties and change my focus a little bit. But it's been rough. I mean, we're so the team's
still number 1 on there.
Yeah, the team's at, let's call it 19 million, but we should be at 26.
So when she tells you that you need to get busy, she wants you to sell.
She wants me.
On White Bear Lake.
And that's my niche. So it is hard because it's like I don't get as excited about going somewhere else. Yeah. There's like and that's the other thing, you guys need to figure out what your passion is. Like my passion is lakeshore. I can tell you per square foot on the lake exactly what the footage. I've got all kinds of things. I got a marketing piece here that nobody will be able to see, but I do a marketing piece and it tracks all of the homes on the lake that have sold and what the frontage was on the lake and what the per cost per foot for frontage was. And so I know those. So if somebody says, what is 1 foot of lakeshore worth on White Bear? I know that number, and none of the other agents in my market know.
Well, how many other lakes by White Bear?
Many.
Yeah,
but
I mean, couldn't you?
I should. Yes. Thank you. So again, I'm a creature. I appreciate that. No, I need to learn too. So that's one of the things that Angela has suggested. Have you thought about a second lake? Yeah, sure. Or third.
Like,
right. They're not that hard.
No.
Just put them in your database and go.
And if that's what you like doing and you're good at.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yes, I need to expand, and there are 2 or 3 other, Turtle Lake and Shoreview is a great lake, and there's a few others that I kind of have my eyes on that I would love to.
We skipped Birch,
Start
that one. I don't know if that house sold that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm on the team, because I'm, whatever, I joined the team. I'm not Luke, but I'm one of the other guys. What's accountability look like for those folks on the team, and what are they getting and working with you and all of that?
So we have, every Monday morning, we have about a 2-hour meeting where we start the meeting with a positive focus, and everybody has to go around the room and talk about something personal and business that happened. And it can be 5 minutes and it can be 30 minutes. And I've learned that I need to be more patient during that phase, because I like to, come on, let's go. Anyways, so we have a lady who's got a couple daughters in college. And so I need to listen to stories that take a long time. And that's fine. So I'm learning to be more patient there. But then we go in, after we go through, Angela goes through a lot of the accountability stuff. And when I say we're not talking about how many calls did you make, how many appointments, that's not how we do it. That's how some teams do it. But they have goals that they've set for the year, and Angela goes through that with them. I've decided not to be the one pounding their chest, because that does not work for me. If they want to stay on the team, they're going to sell. And if they're not, they're going to fail their way off the team. And we had one fail her way off the team last year. And that was great. She needed to go. So that's how we do it. And at the end of our meeting, we have something called Coach's Corner, which gets back to your, what's a good reason to be on our team. So we have 2 agents that have been in less than 4 years on our team. And the amount they learn in 1 2-hour meeting is, I think, unbelievable. Like they are prepared to go sell anything. They've learned so much in 2 or 3 years in our meetings. So the question is, number one, they can get in the door on any listing, and I can help them secure that listing, make sure they get the fee they deserve, all of that. And then we also, what they've learned in those meetings and how to say it, I think is so critical. And we go through that and talk about what are we telling people? How do we phrase things? What do we say to get through these inspections? It was especially powerful during COVID. We all learned, we got to the point where we just didn't lose, our buyers didn't lose houses. We were that good. I don't say they were that good, but it was largely because Luke and I had been kind of through the fire a number of times. And we said, okay, you got to remove this. You got to get rid of the specs. You got to have get appraisal gap coverage. You got to have all of those things, or you're not even in the hunt. And our buyers generally listen to us, and that's how we succeed. Obviously, some of that's gone away now with the softer market today, but it was really powerful because we just didn't lose a lot of. I think a lot of people got really frustrated working with buyers during COVID. We were thriving because we were winning, especially with 20 and 30 offers. It's cool.
And this wasn't on the list, hopefully it's okay. So as you look forward, where you're sitting right now, what's your biggest challenge?
For real estate or anything?
All the above. Yeah. You're in the therapy chair here.
I think for anybody who's in their, 50 to 65 age range, that's looking to do something else in life, maybe retirement so another thing I would have done, to go back to one other thing, is I would have gotten a license a while ago in another state. I think that would have been helpful for my winters, because I still don't like winter, and I'm still here stuck in the winter. And I, at some point, would like to do something a little different in the winter. My point to that is, I'm not sure when I'm able to retire, because I don't know that I understand that piece. And so I'm hoping my brother's actually my financial planner. He's like, "Well, you can retire whenever you want." I'm like, no, I don't think so. I know how fast we burn through money. And so that just doesn't make sense to me. Plus I enjoy selling. So I think that's probably the next step is I have portal searches set up in 3 cities. So that's kind of exciting. I just don't know which city I want to go to, I don't know when I can go. So I'm waiting for somebody to tell me it's okay to go. I guess that's what my biggest challenge is, because it'd be fun to do, to get a license somewhere else, Arizona, maybe Florida, Palm Springs. There's a bunch of places I'd like to go and do something different. So that's kind of the next 5 to 10 year challenge for me.
Nice.
And then to figure out how to navigate this market. This market's tough, but I think if you're saying and doing the right things and you're working a little harder, we 3 have been through several of these, and you just get through them. You just have to work a little harder. That means more phone calls. But I think we're up for that.
Yeah. I mean, so your point about almost every single person we've interviewed in the last 3 years has a coach or has in the past had a coach. You know, I just hired a MAPS coach for the first time here right after mega camp, and I actually have on my schedule time block for lead gen an hour a day. Shocker, what a novel idea, right? And so I think if you're not spending time proactively lead generating now in this market we're in and going into, then you might as well not even do this. So any final thoughts, any final questions, any final advice as we wrap? I know you got to hit the golf course here
I have-
soon, but
Well, I got one thing that I think if I could take one class, maybe more and more, or one area of learning that I think would be really helpful to newer agents, it would be, I don't know what it's called, but it would be something like the art of closing. The one challenge I have, it's probably a personality flaw, is I'm not super good at asking people to sign anything. Purchase agreements, listing agreements, that's not my thing. I happen to have an amazing assistant who pushes papers and like points and says sign, and it gets done like that, which is just like an amazing skill. I don't have that skill or haven't perfected that skill. And I think that would be the one area of training that I would do more of if I was a new agent, is how you do that and do it effectively. And the other thing I would say to do for those of you that are going to work with friends is, if you're going to work with friends, and I work with friends all the time, is make sure that you get your friends under contract. Because you will have some tough friendships to navigate when you lose out on a transaction with a friend because they did something that might be less than honest in your eyes. But it was no big deal in their eyes because they found a better opportunity, and you should just understand. And that doesn't feel good. And it's happened to me a number of times. And I think getting that buyer contract signed, you know, usually you'll get the listing if you get the buy, but you need to find the house first. And so anyways, that's just my words of wisdom. If you're working with friends, is make sure you have a contract signed.
And family.
And family, maybe even worse with family, right?
I
Even
agree.
more challenging, right?
cool. All right, he's got to run. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, sir, for making the trip.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
We can send the notes.
Show you this. This is a new paper that just came out. So this comes out quarterly. And so we just did the